Hello, my name is Troy Ruhe,
I'm Tyler Hoskins.
and you're listening to our Sick Ass podcast. Kia ora, and welcome to another guest episode of the Sick Ass podcast. We are extremely lucky to have this guest in today. She doesn't actually live down here in Dunedin anymore, but rumour has it she did come down especially for this episode. Very lucky. A lot of reflection, I think, is going to go down in this episode, and I think a really cool thing about this is that we smash a few of the stereotypes around what it is to be successful. So we're going to find out. Oh, hey. Yeah, it's a little spicy there, but we're going to find out as we go through this episode. So today's guest is Tiana Hotham. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. Right, so the first thing we do need to talk about is the fact that you have come back down. So I've lived in Dunedin this is my 8th year now, and it's starting to feel like it's quite unreal, right? It's a student city. We kind of get away with a little bit more than what you usually would in the quote-unquote real world. So you've been back, you've gone out, you've had a little taste of everything else that's going on out there. So now that you've been, how many days have you been?
I think I arrived yesterday.
Yeah, you've been here you've had a little bit of a taste right now, and I guess your perception change. What's different from when you were here as a student to now coming back as a grown person?
Oh, I don't know if we go that far. I guess considering I was in Dunedin for 5.5 years,
All right.
I'm feeling better. I think I would feel a bit anxious if I was coming back and I was staying for the long haul. But being here for 5 days feels right.
Yeah.
I guess I've changed a lot. I have been away for a year, so a year ago I was in Dunedin. Lots can happen in a year, but it's exciting to be back. And as you say, it feels like a different world coming back.
Yeah.
I feel like my life, my actual real life, is I kind of feel like I'm on holiday, and I'm catching up with everyone, and it's cool to just see everyone back here doing their thing.
Yeah, so you know how it feels for us who actually live here.
Yeah.
It's basically a holiday. It's weird. We
Yeah,
don't have any,
yeah.
well, because I haven't actually worked here, but I pretty much do daily things here. And I think if I was to go away and come back and do what you did, I would see that I've lived a very weird-ish life right now. But just for yourself, I mean, you haven't been here long and you haven't really had a chance to get out and about. But what are the main differences? I know you're seeing this more as a holiday, but if you were to come back and stay, I'd say, what would you kind of have to do for yourself to actually make it work?
I think a key thing is coming back here, I feel old. I've noticed, and that's because that's what happens, you get older. But if I was to come back here, I would have to join a club of some kind. So whether it was CrossFit, Hot Yoga Dunedin, big fan of both. But I think to come back and work here is a completely different experience to be here as a student. Yeah. I love Dunedin as a city. I think it's a very cool city. But it is a student city.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Right. So I guess we're going to jump around the timeline a little bit here, because obviously where you are now is informed by a lot of the things that we go through in life. And sometimes, for us to properly reflect, it's like when you pick up a book, sometimes that book's not ready for you in that moment. So when you go back to reflect on that, it's like, I wasn't mature enough at that time, those sorts of things. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that you've actually dabbled in a gap year. Multiple gap years, actually. So your first one was out of high school. If you just want to give us a little bit of a taste on that.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I'd go to uni. I just didn't know what to study. And it was funny. I was actually I remember the moment so clearly, was doing stats homework and didn't know how to do it. Right. And I thought, well, if I can't do this homework, how am I going to do uni? And so I just started emailing schools in England, being like, hey, I want to do a gap year. I had heard of some people that had done it. And so was really lucky to go to this school called Lancing College. Right. Harry Potter was asked to be filmed there, which very, very bougie place. Yeah. Nothing like New Zealand has to offer. Right. And it was only meant to be 1 year. My visa was for 2. Right. Got about halfway through and was like, I may as well use up the visa. Cool. Stayed for 2. Yeah. And that was the best decision I probably ever made for myself.
So while you were over there, what are the types of things that I guess, you take a little bit of time away from home. You're back now, so that might be visa issues as well as like maybe your calling is back here. But what are the types of things to you that you start to realize as you actually get time away from home?
I think the biggest thing is it takes you out of the environment and gives you just a bigger perspective of the world. You realise how small New Zealand is, but you also realise how special our country is, how diverse our country is. And you kind of, when you get out of your environment, you're given a time and place to be able to reflect on everything that's happened and I guess if you don't change your environment, you don't get that kind of bird's eye outside perspective because you're living in it.
Yeah. So without getting too, like you don't have to go into too much depth, but what were maybe some key concepts of things that you actually got some proper reflection on because you were away from the nest?
I think, so I did a third gap year and that's where most reflection took place, but post high school gap year in the UK, I was 18, first time away from home. My parents were super strict on me growing up. And to be fair, it was freedom. I was overseas, I had no responsibilities, I was earning money, and it was a chance to just be me. But I think at the time, because I was so young and it was my first taste of being away, that not a hell of a lot of reflection happened there. It was more Japan, older, and just I drank a lot.
All right, so
that's kind of what I did, and I would do it differently if I went back now.
Yeah, cool. That's a really cool lead in there. So we'll get to Japan shortly. But if you were to go back and do it again, it's really hard to say that I'd go back and change things because like you're here because you went through all of that. But you actually came back to study after those years of a lot of drinking and all that. So what kind of tells you at that moment? I know you said you wanted to go to uni, but when was that moment or the click in your head where you're like, no, I want to go to uni and I want to study this?
Well, one, that lifestyle's not sustainable. And so I wanted to do PE. PE is what I liked at school.
Great degree. Great people.
Exactly. All reasons why I wanted to do it, but my thought process was, what do I want at the end of that? I didn't know. And I just happened to meet like separate individuals, and all of them had studied law. None of them were lawyers. And I thought they were pretty cool. I liked how they could think. And so I was attracted to their thinking. I was like, okay, I always knew I was going to go to Otago, and that was because it was the furthest away from my parents. I love my parents. It makes it sound like I don't, but it's just what I needed to be me. But I was like, I'll do first year law. If I get in, I get in. If I don't, law was never for me. And I always knew I wanted to do a BCom in marketing. It's my creative avenue, I guess. I enjoy marketing.
So do we ruin the book by saying you finished your both degrees?
I did, and I got to the end of doing law, and what people don't tell you when you start law is that there's actually this other bit you've got to do if you want to be a lawyer. So last time I was in Dunedin a year ago, the first half of the year I did my profs and I'm being admitted to the bar in November.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I guess where we come from is you're going through this growth. So the journey is always like a journey of growth, and you're kind of always becoming something the entire time. And I think where a lot of people get stuck is that they're always kind of aiming for something, and then once they get there, they're happy just to chill. But then you do a gap year, you do come down to uni, and you kind of have your ideas of what it is you want to study and what it is you kind of want to have coming through. So 5.5 years is a very long time. It's majority, or like at that point in your time, it's at least a quarter of a lot of the education that you've done. During that time, compared to high school, this is something I really like to do, but how did you change or see yourself as a changed person from your high school days where everything's pretty much catered for you to becoming completely independent?
Well, I guess 2 gap years, that was kind of another dreamland. Like that was, as I said, no responsibility. So Dunedin, it was kind of back to life, living away from home, trying to navigate a flat situation, money, to be able to afford to be here. And I think, you know, your stock standard is 3 years in Dunedin, and by the end of it, you just can't wait to get out because it's cold, for one. But also, I think people try to do the same thing every year. Yeah, and if you try to do the same thing every year, then you get bored, you want to get away. So I was really fortunate to get a job at Unipol. So my first year, I would say Castle Street, I went straight to Castle. Second year, I started at Unipol, and that was reffing and on front desk. My third year, I didn't want to ref anymore, but at Unipol, you can't just front desk, you've got to do something else. So I started instructing group fitness. Fourth year, I ended up working at 3 gyms across Dunedin, which was cool. And then my 5th year, I Kiwi hosted. So I think in terms of growth, every year I looked for something different, and it kept my time in Dunedin interesting. And
for all of those, I guess the common theme of them is that you are the center point for a lot of different people acquiring services. So you're working with people a lot of the time. So group fitness, you're definitely in class. Front desk, so a lot of it is to do with that relationship building there. Have you kind of always been someone who seeked social kind of interaction?
100%. No, I would describe myself as a introverted extrovert, probably. Right. But I think coming from a big family, I'm the eldest of 5 kids. My dad's 1 of 9, my mum's 1 of 10.
Big families.
And so I think people have just always been key to my life. So trying to be able to relate to people. But what I get confused with is a lot of people who I see and I'm like, man, they can just talk to anyone. And then you actually get to know them and they're not very, like they say, I'd actually rather be by myself. So what is it that you do? Or like, do you have tools for yourself that you're just like, okay, I can do this? What types of things? It's definitely been a work in progress. I would say I am more comfortable speaking to people now. But especially first coming down to Dunedin, I found it really hard to navigate relationships and build friendships, especially because I didn't go into a hall. True. And so I guess a tool that I have come to use is that people like talking about themselves, and I guess that's why this podcast works. So a tool I use is to ask people about themselves, and it's not an interrogation as such, it's I am actually genuinely interested in the experiences you have, because there's going to be something that you've experienced that I can take away from. And is that not how you just build relationships?
Well, yeah, exactly. You give people that opportunity or that platform to be able to speak about things that they're interested in, and most of the time it's themselves.
Exactly.
But another thing in terms of communication that I probably need to give T props for is that a lot of the content that I did put out, you would give like really cool feedback to, and you'd give me positive feedback, and it actually made me feel like what I was doing was at least reaching someone. And we had a little discussion about that before. Did you want to elaborate on that a bit?
I think positive feedback, especially in the day and age of social media, it's so easy for me to give you positive feedback, and I know that's going to make you feel good. And I don't know, for me, I guess I am a people person, that if I can make you feel good, it makes me feel good.
Right.
Yeah. So
like that fulfillment of like, it's a social interaction where you can both just benefit from this.
Exactly. Like and even when you come across someone, I front desk Unipol, and like they've got a cool bag, you saying to them, oh, I really like your bag, is so small and requires nothing from me, but people like getting compliments. Yeah.
And as long as you're genuine about it, because I
100%.
think a lot of the time, well, it's a common theme that comes across in our podcast a lot, is that we always talk about you are your biggest critic. So in your head the whole time you're walking, you're like, oh my gosh. So use the bag example, like this is a stupid bag, I don't know why I got this bag. And then if someone validates it to you to say, hey, cool bag, that's someone else. That's 100% everyone else
Yeah.
that you needed to hear from, you're like, I guess it's not that bad in the end. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And I think it gives a lot of people trust in
100%.
that person, because they're like, so as long as you're genuine, I guess, is the key with that.
All about giving those warm fuzzies.
Oh,
Yeah,
warm fuzzies.
warm fuzzies.
Well, so what does a warm fuzzy feel like?
It feels exactly as it sounds, warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
You know when you just get that warm fuzzy feeling on your insides?
Yeah, it's that. True. Okay. All right. I'm going to try.
Do you not get that?
I'm going to try write a paper about the warm fuzzy, and we can try to see what it's like for other people around the place. Actually, that could be a buzz question for other people that come on. So I'll reference you in the future there.
Thank you.
Nice. Cool. So we also had a discussion about this podcast as well. We did an episode, I can't remember, it was a few episodes ago, and we did talk about the culture shock that both Tyler and I experienced when we came down to Otago. So you've kind of touched on a little bit. You went from like family vibes and then kind of came down here, but you flatted on Castle Street. Now, we referenced Castle. We never lived on Castle, but I remember distinctly walking down that and just being like, I cannot believe what I've got myself into. So do you want to like have a little talk about that?
I was very lucky that I was flatting with, I'm from Hamilton, so I was flatting with 5 other people from Hamilton. Half of us had travelled in gap year number 1, and then they'd all come down here. So I had a very cool group of people to live with. But I think it was a shock to the system just studying and just navigating a new space, and also being so young. And I guess that's why I'm a big advocate for the gap year. This is a bit off topic, but a lot of people come to Dunedin, they do their first year, and it's your first taste of freedom, but you've got the responsibility of uni, whereas like a gap year, you go away and you have no responsibility of uni, you're just doing it. So I guess coming down here, I was a bit more focused. I was here for uni. But what was the question?
So the question is just like,
no,
that was cool. But the biggest, like, for you, I guess, coming down here and just seeing what life was like down here, it's just like, goodness me.
I think a big part was the money side. A lot of people come down here and they're very fortunate to have the bank account of mum, pa. And in some aspects, what comes with that is that there's not a lot of respect for property and for people.
I see.
But I think it was the finances. I had to finance my uni, and I found it hard to live with people that didn't have that same concern, that money wasn't an issue for them. But, you know, everyone's different. Yeah,
absolutely. We had that as well. I came down and had to like pay for everything basically. And I just, remember... I don't know. I think I got asked. I had to go change a paper, and then I like showed my transcript, and I remember the course advisor saying to me like, "You've done so well. Like, how?" And I think she wanted something, and I was like, "Well, it's like $1,000 a paper."
Yeah.
I was like, "That's motivation in itself."
100%.
Yeah. And people are just like throwing it away, not going, and I'm like, "Have you ever seen $1,000 before?"
Yeah. Like uni is expensive.
Yeah.
And that's again why I'm really thankful I had that job at Unifol, because it really gave me a means to be able to live.
Very nice. Cool. So you've talked about the whole gap year thing. So you went from you gapped year, you studied, then you took another gap before getting into work?
Yes.
Cool. So you did your first one in Europe, then your second one?
In Europe.
In Europe?
So I did 2 years.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
UK, 2 years. And then it was actually the first goal I ever made for myself. I knew it was the Rugby World Cup and the Olympics in Japan 2020.
Yeah.
All my family play rugby, but I'm not one for like contact. And it was the first time I ever manifested anything. It was post uni, I want to be in Japan. Didn't really think of it until end of my 5th year. And again, I just started meeting people that had done it. It's called the JET program. It's run through the Japanese government, who had done this program, and they pay for your flights over. And for me, that was like light bulb moment. Oh, this is a good way to be able to do it. So applied, and it worked out. And so I I went in August last year, and I was meant to be there 2 years, but COVID
Obviously.
brought me home.
Yeah. But during your time there, so let's just pretend you're going to go like as you were. So you were going to follow the plan. There was no virus that was going to come in. What are the types of things going on in your head as to, so firstly you manifest it, then it comes true. What does that do for your momentum in life?
It made me realize that you can manifest things that I don't know, if you truly, it sounds so cheesy, but like if you actually believe that you can do something, you can do it. And Japan was a key example of that. What
were the types of things you were doing while you were over there?
I was teaching English. If anything, my most disliked part of that was the English teaching. I'm not an English teacher. But it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It was also the most challenging thing I've ever done. I don't speak Japanese. And coming back to the communication and relationships, my biggest takeaway from Japan was the importance of meaningful relationships. And I think also coming back down to Dunedin and seeing like people I haven't seen in a while is that I can speak English to them, and I can connect with them. And I guess being in Japan, culturally extremely different, but when you don't speak the language, it's hard, but it gives you space to reflect.
Yeah, it does.
I ended up being there 8 months in total, and that was just a full-on 8 months of reflection of my life so far.
So in terms of reflection, were you big on reflection prior to that?
No, I think I hadn't had the space yet to reflect.
So you were kind of weirdly given silence for the fact that you couldn't speak the language of the people, so you couldn't really like engage there, but you gave yourself that, so that's that whole finding the silver lining and when things are kind of going a bit cloudy. But what kind of was your process of reflection, and then we can actually get into the types of things that you kind of discovered as revelations?
To be fair, when I was in the UK, I had a travel journal, which is very funny to read back on now. So journaling, and one of my tools I picked up along the way was it's called the 5-minute journal. And I'm a huge fan, and that's really just changed, I guess, one, how I start my morning and finish my day, but it just builds a positive mindset. So 5 minutes in the morning, 3 things that would make today great, 3 things I'm grateful for, and a positive affirmation. And then at the end of the day is 3 things that made today great, and 1 thing that would have made today even better. Right,
so you actually set your intentions for the day, and then you also kind of look at all the good that did happen in that day. Were there any days where you found it extremely difficult to actually do it?
No, not really. Right by my bed, first thing I do. It's something I enjoy doing.
Cool.
And what I also like about it is you look back on it and you're like, oh, I was feeling this way that day, and I was grateful for this then. And it just builds like positive mind habits. What
about finding things to be grateful for? I know there's been days where, because I do the same, I do a similar thing where I like practice gratitude and all that sort of stuff, but there are literally days where I have to just jump to the most basic thing ever. Like I'm grateful to be able to breathe. Like that's
I'm grateful for this cup of tea.
So you do kind of just like go back to the bare basics.
100%. Like you're not gonna be 100% the whole every day, all day, and those days that you wake up and you just don't want to do the day, I think that's when you have to take it back to basics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just be grateful for anything that we can have in that moment. Yeah, but
it will be like, I'm grateful for the sun shining today. You know, I'm grateful for big one. It was like my family. Right. People. That are important to me.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I think that it's always nice to hear it again, because it's something that we all know so much, but then those are the things that we do take for granted. Because if we like overlook it all the time, because it's always going to be there for us, then when we actually are forced to like look for something, it's like, oh my gosh, all those things that are always there for me, I can like really give it some attention now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about giving it that attention, and it doesn't matter if it's basics. Even once it was like, I'm grateful for like having a roof over my head, and it just puts life into perspective of how privileged like you and I are, even to just be here.
Absolutely. Or to even be able to be warm, and I was so warm that I could take my hoodie off and be like,
exactly.
And now we can put this out for other people to hear and all like, that sort of stuff.
Life's complicated, but it's also very basic, isn't
it? I think if you get back to, I mean, there's all these books on essentialism and just like living with the bare necessities that we do need. We don't start comparing ourselves to other people because we just have life. Oh man, very, very cool.
So there was a period between Dunedin and Japan that I was just living out of a suitcase. And that was cool. It wasn't cool because it's not practical and I'm kind of messy and all my stuff was everywhere, but it was cool that that's all I needed,
So like that kind of teaches you about yourself, like the fact that you don't need as much as you thought you did. So, I mean, reflection-wise, it's really cool because you start to see like how you would have acted in certain scenarios. Was there anything while you were in Japan, or even maybe coming back from Japan and being here for a bit, that you saw you are just like a transformed individual?
I think my ability to speak to people is better, and I just value people. As I said, I value the meaningful relationships. I'm living in Hamilton at the moment, and it's the first time I have lived in Hamilton since high school. Right. And it's really special to be there and to be around my family, and it's cool. My whole family is down in Dunedin this weekend, and especially COVID too. COVID brought all of us under the same roof for the longest period of time since high school. Otherwise, we only have Christmas Day where everyone's there. Right. And that, I don't know, family's real special.
Would you say that compared to like maybe pre-uni yourself, and now you're, I guess, you're better at looking inside yourself, but also do you think you're a little bit more you're a bit quicker to find things that are actually good about every situation?
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely put it down to the 5-minute journal though. It's a bit, as they say, practice makes perfect, and it's been practicing those thoughts. It was also interesting when I came back from Japan, obviously living at home, it was noticing different things that would trigger me that when I was living at home in high school, I guess I was living in a constant state of fear, and I didn't realise that at the time because you kind of just living your life. But little things that I guess just mum and dad do and say, and when I'd come home from uni, I would get myself in a pit of just getting really upset, letting my emotions take over. Whereas now I think I'm better at recognising and directing my energy to things that actually require my energy, and letting some things, really cool. Just settle.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And like, I guess because we only have a finite amount of energy every single day, and if you keep putting it towards the things that just trigger you, which some people do, I mean, well, see how they're going, but when you can start seeing quickly before something arises, and you just like either divert your attention or just say, not now, like that is a thought. I think life just gets better, and it's not that the world has changed. I think it's your paradigm on the world changes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's all about that narrative, isn't it?
Right. So your narrative now, no, we won't talk about you having to write a story or anything, but narratives around identity I think are really, really cool. So obviously everyone will know listening to this that my research is a lot to do with like Indigenous health, and a lot of me having to get into that spot kind of came with reflections and confronting this idea of what it is to be like a Cook Island Māori male here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now you did an internship, and it was a Pacific one?
Yes, the Tuputai internship at the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment.
Right. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So prior to that, what was your engagement with your Pacific identity?
So my dad is Pākehā, my mum is a mixture, but mainly Samoan, Fijian. And my sister and I are both very fair in our skin. I think people are kind of like you're something, but you don't know what that is. And my grandparents left their respective islands and didn't teach their children anything. And my mum has her own difficulties with that, but she really wanted to teach her children about where we're from. But as a child, I always felt like I was too white. I was too white to be Pacific Island, so it made me feel uncomfortable in Pacific Island spaces. I went to a Samoan kindergarten, and I guess that was my parents trying to get me to learn Samoan. And I actively remember this one time, my father's a teacher, and he had helped this boy at school, and his mum said to my dad, how can I repay you? And Dad was like, you can teach my daughters how to dance. And I went to this first dancing lesson, and I felt so uncomfortable. I cried and was like, I'm not doing this. But again, my parents wanted to instill that, Tiana, this is your culture, and this is where your family's from. And again, if you know more about like your heritage and your background, you have a better understanding of yourself.
Absolutely.
And then it was really cool because now we've got this cool photo on the wall, and it's me and my sister doing the Siva, and like I look really happy actually in it. But this internship was my first time that I felt comfortable in a Pacific space, I suppose. I was surrounded by a lot of love, and I think that made a difference. I also think being older and understanding that you need to know where you came from allowed me to put myself in a space that I knew I felt uncomfortable, but it was going to be so beneficial, and it was life changing. Yeah,
for sure.
And then I got more into the Pacific Island Law Society, PILSA, is that what? Yeah. And so it helped out more there because I guess as you get older, it's all about giving back, isn't it? It's about sharing your experience to pull other people, especially Pacific Island communities, up and in that area of law too.
For sure. I mean, we're all going through it, but at the same time, like not talking alternate universes, but years on from here, we'll have someone who's walking a very similar path. So kind of how I always think about life and how I always think about my purpose is not actually for me to like get the gold crown at the end. It's actually to, you know, with like digging tracks and everything, it's to help someone else be able to navigate a space quite a bit more. So you went through pretty much head first by yourself, or did you have a really good support network as you were doing it?
In terms of
like just kind of finding yourself as a Pacific Islands person.
I coming to uni, and also I struggled in terms of getting back after gap year. Drinking didn't help, but getting back into that academic, so I actively had to do the Choots and the Pacific Island.
Cool.
I don't know, there was these specific Pacific Island tutorials. Yeah. And so I'd always go to that, and so I met more people. And then doing the internship though, that just gave me a network of people that I felt comfortable with and that I wanted to share with, and that I could then give back to the younger law and commerce students coming through.
So in terms of paving ways, and in terms of you now seeing yourself kind of, because it is a transformation a little bit in who you see yourself as, where, you know, it's once again, like I was saying before, we put a lot of this pressure on ourselves of like what we think we're meant to be, and then you kind of just accept that if I just stay true to who I am and who I want to be, a lot of people just kind of open arms accept you, and the people who don't, just assholes. But
exactly.
So with that, how has that equipped you for what you're doing just in everyday life? I would
say I'm still learning. I'm still learning because I haven't grown up in the islands. All my mum's family, which is like my island side of the family, they live in Australia. But it's cool in the sense that it's trickled down like through our siblings. I like, my brother is way more active, and I feel like I'm getting a bit off the road of where we're going.
You're fine.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Nice. So yeah, cool. No, I think you're just going to go on an appreciation pathway to say that, you know, you've seen what can happen if you properly just embrace who it is you want to be, and then your family as well, because like you do affect a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people take enough credit for the effect and the like impact that they can have on other people who actually look up to them as role models. Because I would say, without making you blush too much, that you are like a role model for a lot of people. Being like an oldest in your family, kind of just taking on what you wanted to do, and then molding the way life looks for you to be the way that you are. Right, so that I think that's what you were trying to say. I think it was on the tip of your tongue, so I'm sorry for talking.
Thank goodness you're here.
No, all right, I could read it. Cool. So just before we get into our final question, I am aware of the time here, and you did touch on it a little bit at the start, but you're working now.
I am.
So what are you actually doing?
I am managing contracts at the Hamilton City Council.
Yeah.
Again, Japan gave me lots of time to think, and it was, how do I mix law, marketing, and sport? And what I came up with was, I want to be a sports agent, but I don't know how to do that. I don't have the skills because this is my first job, and so I am taking, it's a 2-year contract in managing contracts.
Right.
And so this next 2 years is learning as much as I can about contracts to hopefully gain the skills and the experience and meet the right people to eventually be a sports agent.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So you do have like, this is, I don't like to say stepping stone, but this, you do see yourself projecting forward into something else. Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
This is 100% a stepping stone.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I guess if you look at my experiences so far, I wouldn't say I don't like to commit to things, but I never thought I'd say this. I guess I like change. I like continuing to push myself outside my comfort zone, because I know that's where it happens.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
It's all about getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. And just not mistaking that with changing too much because the world's not working for you at that moment. So like when it's ready, when you're ready to take the cake out.
And I think I've had a lot of practice in adapting, and that's adapt or die. You know, that's what they say.
That is what they say. Actually, I had a bit about this with Ashton, good old Ashton, also Unipol reference. Go back and listen to it if you haven't. I actually had the title of social rep at Unipol, and I gave the social rep to Ashton. There it is. There's the timeline. It is coming back together. Shout out Ashton. He was. I remember we were texting and we were trying to like organize a time to record, and then I said thank you for making that change. It means a lot. And he was like, humans are adaptable, Troy.
Exactly, and that's again. I think it's easier said than done, but not getting so caught up in the situation, and I guess finding comfort when change is hard, that you're not going to feel like that forever. It's just right there right now, and cool. It's going to get better.
So cool. All right, so I guess with all of that comes this whole idea of, so what we're trying to do with this podcast and what we're trying to do with getting guests on is that we approach you because we think you have something to offer for a lot of people, and then we have a tangible takeaway at the end. And I think we've already discussed it during this podcast. I'll see if you do something different, but we'd like to get from our guests something that they do almost close to daily that makes them feel like they've had an optimal day.
In Japan, I started getting out of bed, and it was hard, and it was like starting my day shouldn't be hard. So I started a morning routine, and I've never been a morning person. So my morning routine is I wake up, I make my bed.
Nice.
First tick, first little achievement. I then do 15 minutes of yoga.
Nice.
So get the blood flowing, and it's amazing that on those cold mornings, just doing that tiny bit of movement, you're just warm. And then I do 10 minutes meditation.
Nice.
And my 5-minute journal.
Nice.
And then I have a cup of tea.
Cool.
And there's my day.
So, okay, wait, hold on. I know that's really cool. Like that's pretty close to how my morning rolls. Have you missed it since you started?
I have missed it this past week.
What does it do to you?
It doesn't warm me up for the day.
Right.
I I feel like I end up burning the candle at both ends, and I feel a step back.
Right.
You know, I don't feel on top of the day. Again, it's like exercise. If you don't warm up and you go straight into it, and like that's where injuries happen.
Absolutely.
And I haven't been doing it lately, and I feel the effects in the sense I'm not warmed up for it. I'm just doing life, but I'm not prepped.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So in terms of being optimized for everything that you need to take in, that's what you need to do to get your mind, body, spirit, everything in action. To be, and you can do that in different places?
I think it works better when you're in a set place.
Yeah.
This past week I haven't been at home, and so I've been sleeping on couches, and which makes the routine a bit harder to follow. But you notice it when you're doing it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to close it out there. But what I want to say on that routine thing there is that I feel like when you do start to travel and go to other places, if you have something like that every single morning, it kind of grounds you wherever you are in that spot. So have you had the chance?
It grounds you.
Yeah, there we go.
That's it.
Yeah.
It grounds you.
It grounds you. Oh,
you
man.
need to have those key things to keep you grounded, you know?
Absolutely.
And I guess us being Virgos and being earth signs, you know?
Yeah. Would make a lot of sense.
It would.
Make a lot of sense.
It does make sense.
It does make sense. Sorry. The language has really escaped me there. But that has been another episode. You don't want to throw anything out before we leave?
No, just thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. It was that was really in depth. It was a lot more. I think I spoke a little bit more than I wanted to.
I kind of like that though.
But you also said at the start that you were really good at making other people talk about themselves. So
it's all about safe spaces, making people feel comfortable.
Right, I see what you did there. This was the whole plot twist, was just to get me to talk about myself. A lot of it, even though you're the guest. But
that's conversations, you know.
Yes,
they've got to flow both ways.
Yeah. So welcome to the Sick As Conversation with Double T over here. Cool. No, thank you so much for coming on today. I think there are a lot of key takeaways that people do need to take away from this. So the things that I picked up as we were going through was, firstly, your ideals of how your life should be should not be dictated by other people. I think that was almost the common theme through everything that you were doing. And until you actually get that chance for proper introspection, do you ever realize that you're just living a life unaware of what it is that you want? That's my first one. And then I think the second one is just being okay being uncomfortable.
Oh, I love it. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
That is it, yeah. So just making sure that if you are put in a position that you're not used to, just sit there for a bit, wiggle around, and maybe just try to make that spot okay for you. We are adaptable human beings, as you said before. Yes, but I think there are a lot of tangible takeaways to take from this. And thank you so much for being a guest on the Sick As podcast. Long time listener, first time caller.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.